Hello, it's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 31st of March. You're tuned into our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at the headlines. In its latest threat, North Korea warns that it'll ruthlessly punish South Korea if it opens a UN human rights office in Seoul as planned later this year. Hopeful signs for the Korean economy as industrial output jumps by its biggest margin in around 4 years in February from a month earlier. Plus, investigators say the co-pilot who deliberately crashed a Germanwings plane in the French Alps had been treated in the past for suicidal tendencies. Our top story this morning, North Korea has threatened merciless action against South Korea if it goes ahead with the opening of a UN office on Pyongyang's human rights in Seoul. The regime's committee, which handles inter-Korean affairs, says Pyongyang will not just watch the opening of the office, saying that Seoul will be the target of, quote, ruthless punishment. It also added that the South was making an unforgivable provocation against their dignity and the North Korean regime. Seoul is set to open this office in the first half of this year. The new South Korean ambassador to China says he doesn't fully understand Beijing's opposition to the possible deployment of a US missile defense system called THAAD to the Korean peninsula. Speaking to reporters on Monday, Kim Jang-soo said Seoul has held no technical discussions with the US on the matter. China says the system, if deployed to South Korea, would threaten its national security as THAAD's radar systems could potentially cover large parts of its territory. When asked about North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's possible visit to China as well, the South Korean envoy said Seoul is not against Pyongyang opening itself up to the outside world. Korea Aerospace Industries has been selected as the top bidder for Korea's indigenous fighter jet development program. In partnership with Lockheed Martin, Korea Aerospace Industries beat out a joint Korean Airbus bid for the $7.8 billion KF-X project to replace the country's aging fleet of fighter jets. Now, Korea wants these new models deployed by the year 2032. The Defense Acquisition Program Administration will continue negotiations with Korea Aerospace Industries over the price and the technology-related issues, and it's going to finalize its decision in June. Korea has also decided to upgrade its missile defense system to a so-called PAC-3 interceptors, which contain more advanced hit-to-kill technology. Seoul has been pushing to upgrade the current system to counter North Korea's evolving ballistic missile threats. The United States has called Japan's wartime sexual enslavement as, quote, trafficking of women for sexual purposes. In a statement made upon request by Korea-based Yonhap news agency, the U.S. State Department said their stance on the issue remains the same. This after Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, in a recent interview with a leading U.S. daily, called the women who were forced to serve as sex slaves, quote, victims of human trafficking. The Korean government took objection to Abe's vague description that didn't imply Japan was the perpetrator. The State Department stressed that the two nations need to settle their historical issues, adding that a strong and constructive relationship between Seoul and Tokyo will promote regional peace and stability. Turning now to the latest initiative to help entrepreneurs turn their ideas into businesses, and nearly half of Korea's creative economy centres are now open, with the latest edition opening outside of Seoul on Monday. This one is going to focus on supporting startups in the ICT sector and helping them hopefully branch out overseas. Our Lee Ji-yoon reports.
From messenger and internet portal Down Kakao to game mogul NCSoft, nearly half of Korea's IT firms call the Pangyo Techno Valley home. So it should come as no surprise that the country's 8th innovation center aimed at ICT convergence has opened up in Gyeonggi-do province. President Park Geun-hye was at the opening ceremony and announced $95 million in funding to help grow the creative tech industry. The area is set to become a testing zone for the Internet of Things, or the concept that all objects are connected to the Internet. Innovative new projects include a pilot to monitor local youth obesity through wearable devices. The ICT Innovation Center will also act as a financial technology or fintech hub, offering one-on-one mentoring connecting startup entrepreneurs and financial consultants, as well as local banking and credit card companies. But President Park stressed that the center looks outward, beyond Korea's borders.
앞으로 경기혁신센터는 전국 17개 혁신센터의 기업 정보를 DB화해서 해외 투자자와 매칭 서비스를 제공하고 해외 창업 기관과 벤처 투자자, 전국 혁신센터와 대기업 등의 글로벌 네트워크를 두루 연계해서 유망 벤처 기업의 글로벌 진출을 적극 지원하게 될 것입니다. 이를 통해 판교는 우리 중소벤처의 글로벌 진출 베이스 캠프가 되고 경기 혁신센터는 믿음직한 셀파가 돼서 스타트업들의 해외 시장 개척을 안내하게 될 것입니다.
With help from these innovation centers, local firms will be able to exhibit their products abroad at events like the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas and the annual Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. Lee Jun, Arirang News.
And President Park Geun-hye has asked the heads of Korea's overseas missions to support Korean firms in expanding their business abroad and to help young Koreans find jobs around the world. At an annual meeting on Monday, the president talked about seeing great potential to build a new growth engine overseas in the Middle East. President Park also asked the diplomats to spearhead Korea's cultural diplomacy, especially as Seoul plans to establish more cultural centres globally and export Korea's cultural contents. Referring to her unification plans, she asked that each and every mission do their part in securing international support for the initiative to set the stage for a unified Korea. Representatives from labour, management and government are making all-out efforts to reach an agreement on how to reform the labour market. They have set Tuesday, today, as the deadline to come up with a draft agreement. They have yet to agree upon how to best reduce the disparity between regular and temporary workers in terms of wages and working conditions, or on policies related to youth employment and reduction of working hours. Now, although some progress has been made, they've had a tough time narrowing their differences. Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan has also expressed a strong will to reach an agreement before the deadline. He noted the difficulties, but said that reaching an agreement was vital to give the country's youth hope for a better future. Korea's industrial output rose at the fastest pace in nearly 4 years last month, raising expectations of a solid recovery momentum. Statistics Korea data shows that production across all industries went up by 2.5% in February from a month earlier. The agency attributes the rise to a low base effect in January and a rise in demand thanks to it being one of the biggest holidays of the year in Korea, the Lunar New Year holiday. It fell in February this year. January's industrial output marked a 2% drop from the previous month. Now, we're still in March now, but April is expected to be a crucial time for the Korean economy. Reforms to the civil pension system and the minimum wage have been on the negotiating table for months now, and time, analysts say, is running out for the economic recovery. Our Son Jung-in has more.
The government is aiming to pull the nation out of the sluggish economy through structural reform in 4 major areas: the public sector, labor, finance, and education, while boosting domestic consumption to revive the economy. However, in April, policymakers will have to come to agreement on the process of reforming the civil servant pension system and on ways to revamp the overall labor market structure. A full-fledged negotiation on minimum wage is also set for next month, amid pressure from the government to raise the salary to increase overall household income. Deputy Prime Minister Choi Kyung-hwan has repeatedly stressed that April is a critical time for accomplishing the reforms. He promised tangible results by the end of the month. It won't be easy. Structural reform itself is a complicated task. It gets even more challenging when the administration, lawmakers, and unions can't find common ground. Questions also remain about whether the National Assembly will be able to pass 9 pending bills on economic revitalization during a month-long provisional session set to begin April 7th. With economic uncertainties still lingering, insiders say the Korean economic landscape will be shaped by the outcome of these structural reform efforts over the next month. 손정인, 아리랑 뉴스.
Now, a widely expected US rate cut and lower global oil prices are hinting at troubles ahead for emerging economies. And that also includes Korea, because the country's exports to emerging markets have taken a big hit during the first 2 months of this year. Our Kim Min-ji has more.
Korean exports to emerging economies took a dive in the first 2 months of this year, casting a cloud over the nation's economy. According to Statistics Korea on Monday, Korea's exports to 18 emerging economies came to nearly $37 billion in the January to February period, down 6.2% from the same period a year earlier. The decline is 3 times bigger compared to Korea's total exports, which dropped about 2% in the cited period. Emerging economies include China, Russia, and India. The decline is a concern for Korea as emerging markets make up about half of its exports, accounting for 45.1% in 2013. But that figure fell to 43.9% last year. Experts say the fall is linked to a widely expected U.S. Federal Reserve rate hike this year. The rate increase could trigger a rush of capital, which can weaken currencies and hurt stock markets of emerging economies. This, coupled with a sharp decline in global oil prices, has hurt oil-producing nations, some of which are also emerging economies. Korea's exports to these countries fell 4.4% in the first 2 months of 2015 compared to the previous year. Given these global conditions, experts say Korea's export outlook remains unclear, and export growth will likely be in the 1% range, down from 2.3% last year. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG 뉴스.
Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following on this Tuesday morning in Seoul. For that, let's connect to Eunice Kim at the News Center. So, Eunice, prosecutors in Germany have broken their silence and are now confirming that the co-pilot of the Germanwings plane, Andreas Lubitz, in fact had some suicidal thoughts in his past.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. The operative word there is past, as they added Lubitz showed no such indication in recent years. The 27-year-old co-pilot of Flight 9525 had been treated by psychotherapists over a long period of time for suicidal tendencies. But Dusseldorf's public prosecutor, Christoph Kumpa, without giving specific dates, said that it was several years before Lubitz was issued his pilot's license. He said recent doctor's visits had resulted in sick notes, but showed no record of desire to hurt others or to commit suicide. He added they were no closer to a motive, that investigators had found torn up doctor's notes in the man's trash can, including one for the day of the crash, but no suicide note. Meanwhile, the head of the forensic team in France says it will take several months to connect the 80 DNA profiles so far identified to the victims themselves using samples provided by the families. He also said it was difficult to assure that all victims would be identified, citing the velocity of this mountain crash. An official memorial service has been set to be held on April 17th to remember the 150 crew and passengers killed in last Tuesday's crash. Germany's president and Chancellor Angela Merkel will attend that service at the famed Cologne Cathedral.
And Eunice, turning now to the United States, and it was a very chaotic morning at the nation's spy agency after a car tried to ram through the entrance.
Yeah, authorities say it happened shortly before 9 a.m. Monday local time when a SUV without clearance to enter tried to evade officers and accelerated toward a NSA vehicle blocking the road. That incited police fire, and one of the men in that vehicle was shot by the guards and later died, while the second man and a police officer were said to have been hurt and hospitalized. Officials said the two suspects were dressed in women's clothing and that the car they were driving was stolen from a hotel. The FBI said the shooting scene was contained and had no reason to believe that it was related to terrorism, Mark.
Yeah, very bizarre story that the two men were dressed as women. Well, we'll have to see what updates we hear about that. But as always, Eunice, thanks ever so much for your reports, and we'll see you back at noon.
See you then.
That a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. Now, a car crash in Nepal has left 4 Korean tourists dead. Seoul's foreign ministry says a minibus carrying the tourists collided head-on with a bigger bus in the early hours of Monday morning, killing 2 men in their 60s and 2 women in their 50s. Another Korean man, also in his 60s, was severely injured and taken to a local hospital, and council staff in Nepal are taking care of him. The tourists were returning to the capital, Kathmandu, from the popular tourist town of Pokhara, which you can see on the map there. Now, deadly crashes are common in Nepal because of poor roads, badly maintained vehicles, and reckless driving. Researchers in the United States have been busy designing robots that are designed to work alongside people, and they say the droids could be used in the medical and housekeeping industries. Our Hwang Jie has the details.
It's not the nurse, but a robot that's handing a surgical scalpel to the doctor. It then passes scissors to the doctor when requested. Until recently, assembly line robots were not able to work alongside people, being that they were often too big, moved too swiftly, and were dangerous for humans to be around. But these so-called collaborative robots are smaller than their predecessors and move in a more controlled and meticulous manner. Experts say they could be utilized in various fields like the medical industry and housekeeping, further expanding the realm of robotics from auto and semiconductors.
Our research is motivated in part by the increasing number of Americans who are elderly or disabled and need assistance in their homes.
With the global market already warming up to the idea of private drones, companies producing these robots are jumping in on the action. And the growing competition and demand is raising expectations of enhanced productivity in the workplace as the problem-solving skills of humans combine with the strength and endurance of robots. Hwang Jie, ARIRANG News.
And a good Tuesday morning to you all as we kick things off with the 2015 Kia Classic, where the Korean golfers look to win their 6th LPGA Tour titles in 7 tries, only to come up short as American Christy Kerr claimed her first title of the season. Despite Korea's Lee Mi-rim going strong during the first 3 rounds of the event, she would end up losing her lead in the 4th round as Christy Kerr storms through the 18 holes on the final day with an amazing 7 under on the day to finish off at 20 under par overall for a 2-stroke victory over Lee Mi-rim. A huge victory for the American as 6 Koreans would finish in the top 10, including Park In-bi, who would finish in 5th place, 2 strokes behind the 3rd place winner Lydia Ko. Now, Korea and New Zealand might have a nice free trade agreement going on now, but at the Seoul World Cup Stadium later tonight, no free wins as the two sides are set for their matchup at 8 p.m. tonight. The 56th-ranked Taek Warriors are undefeated against the 134th-ranked New Zealand team with 5 wins and 1 draw, but the bigger story in the match will be Cha Do-ri and his final appearance as a Korean national football team member. And manager Uli Stilke stated earlier he will be subbed out a few minutes before the end of the first half for a well-deserved ovation from the fans before his retirement ceremony takes place during halftime. Now going to the 2014-2015 Men's V-League Championship Series, the 8-time champions Samsunghwaja Blue Fangs were the heavy favorites going against the OK Savings Bank. Only OK Savings Bank crushed the Blue Fangs 3-0 in Game 1. And last night, Game 2 took place with the Blue Fangs looking to even the series. But holy cow, a new match, but same start for the OK Savings Bank as their defense against Leo Martinez helps them take the first 2 sets with ease, 25-22 and 25-20. And despite Samsunghwaja trying to rally back in this match to avoid a 2-0 hole, Robert Landy Simone's 24 points and Song Myung-gun's 14 help OK Savings Bank with another 3-0 sweep, as they're now only 1 win away from their first V-League title. Now, Pittsburgh Pirates slugger Kang Jong-ho's short trip to the minor league camp gave him an opportunity to work out his hitting mechanics, leading to him hitting his second home run of the spring against the Atlanta Braves on Sunday. And while his manager Clint Hurdle was pleased with him breaking out of his slump, questions remain whether or not he can hit at a major league level. But the Pirates insist that he will not start the season in the minors and hopes that his last game is just a preview of more things to come for the former Nexen hero, as his defensive ability should be an asset for the Pirates. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. The last day of March is kicking off under high levels of dust. Microdust mixed with yellow dust is still blanketed whole peninsula, causing headaches for most of us. And it looks to be a rainy afternoon today. Rain clouds will be rolling in, dropping showers from this afternoon here in the capital, and it's likely to rain throughout the day today. But it will be a very light one. Most parts, including here in Seoul, will get less than 5 millimeters. Though Jeju will receive the most amount, up to 30 millimeters, so it shouldn't be enough to clear out all the dust in the air and relieve the dryness. And temperatures should be a tad cooler than yesterday, but still relatively warm, as the daytime high here in Seoul will hike up to 17. Daegu and Gwangju rise to 22 and 18, while Busan gets up to 19. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 21 and 18, and Dokdo rises to 18. Now it seems like another band of rain is in the forecast from Thursday afternoon, which will linger till Friday morning, and it should rain a bit heavier. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, on that note, we're going to leave it for now. We have plenty more stories online, as we always do, and it's also worth checking out our smartphone application. This app has all the latest news and programs from Arirang on there. We'll be back at noon Korea time with our next newscast. If you can join us then, goodbye.